The story of Exo One is intentionally meant to be obscure. Like other similar games like Returnal, Cocoon, Journey, and Abzu, Exo One gives us just enough of a story to start putting the pieces together, while at the same time leaving enough to our imaginations to have a different lasting impact for each of us. In this video, I will go over the facts in the game and a few of my own theories on what this could mean for the story. While the gameplay is simple, I encourage everyone to play Exo One. It has a deep story and some really fun mechanics once you dive deep enough into it. While the game is releasing on PlayStation on June 27th, it's been available on Xbox and Windows for a couple years now. I had a quick chat with the developer before it released in 2022 asking about a PlayStation release, which they did assure me that there would be one. So I've been eagerly waiting for it all this time. If you're like me and haven't experienced the story yourself yet, please play the game first and come back and watch this video after. Exo One is a beautiful game, and I hope more and more people get to enjoy it. This video will be heavy on spoilers, so if you care about the story at all, please come back and watch this later. So, if you're still here, set your gravity to low and buckle in for this wild ride with me. Most of the story of Exo One is drip-fed to us through captions with garbled audio and is completely out of order. While this may have a deeper meaning, let's get the basics of what we know out of the way first. Before the game begins, mankind sent a team to explore Jupiter. This led to what became known as the Jupiter disaster. The main character was the sole survivor of this expedition. A craft called the Jupiter Flyer flew into the atmosphere of Jupiter. While exploring, something happened. The ship caught fire due to a large energy surge. The craft exploded, killing the crew before the escape pods could launch. Our main character, the commander, was in a craft above Jupiter called the Jupiter Orbiter. This is how he survived. Helpless and unable to do anything for his crew, he watched their mission go up in smoke. Mission Control at that point lost contact with both the Orbiter and the Flyer and assumed that they were all dead. 1 year after the disaster, the Jupiter Orbiter arrived back at the International Space Station with our main character still alive. Hours after returning home, a strange signal is received by Earth. The signal is suspected to be from alien life, and it contains schematics for a strange alien craft. Shortly after, work began on the spaceship. The survivor announced that the message in the craft was meant for him, and he wanted to be the one to pilot it back to Jupiter. He believed he could save the crew of the Jupiter Flyer with this alien probe. His wife, Clara, who was first overjoyed to see that he was still alive, began questioning him. She began to think that he had changed and wondered what happened to him on that long journey alone in space. Through news reports, we learned more about the spaceship. It did not contain room for a cockpit or any space inside for a person to pilot it. Whoever would pilot the ship, it was going to be a one-way journey. Understanding the risks, the main character says we have to stop thinking in human terms and trust in their design. The commander's request to pilot the craft was denied. It's implied that the higher-ups believe he's not well or is suffering from some sort of mental break from being in space for so long. They choose another pilot and continue building the probe. The launch day finally comes, but it's a complete failure and they're unable to get the alien craft to do anything. Knowing that only he can control it, the main character tracks down an informant to find where the craft is being stored. The informant is able to find the craft somewhere in a remote building in the desert. After breaking in, stealing the craft, the commander's final journey to Jupiter begins. This takes us to where the game begins. We play as the main character piloting the alien craft, learning how to control and manipulate it. Jumping from planet to planet, he becomes more familiar with the craft. We see flashes of memories that are triggered by sonic booms, crashing, or thunder. On some of these planets, we also witness a non-casual event, something that looks very much like the Exo One. This craft flies along ahead of the commander. It doesn't appear to guide us, but more playfully jumping from planet to planet as well with us. On the last planet before Jupiter, we chase this non-casual entity through the clouds. It flies into a beam of light, recreating the accident of the Jupiter flyer, and creates a singularity. After flying through that singularity, the Exo One is on Jupiter, just before the explosion. This time, in the Exo One, the commander is able to trigger the crew's escape pods before the explosion happens. The crew launches safely above the atmosphere and wait to be picked up and rescued by the Jupiter orbiter. Now, floating among the clouds of Jupiter, we hear one final memory of an old man telling a young boy that it's an entire world filled with clouds, that you'd never touch the ground. And the boy happily exclaims that they really want to go. It's here that the game ends. They leave you to fly among the clouds of Jupiter as long as you'd like, and with a really nice touch, you must hold a button to power down and end the game. This adds a real finality to the game. It feels like holding that button not only finishes it, but also the Exo One and the commander. While simple, it's a pretty powerful story when you break it down like that. As much as we know, there are still a lot of things we don't know about the story. How does one pilot the ship with no cockpit? How does the commander go back in time? What is the non-casual event that we follow across the different worlds? This is where my theories and interpretations come in. I would love this to be a discussion, so please let me know your thoughts in the comments. Early on, the reporter tells us that there is no place for a cockpit on the alien ship. Admiral Brown says, "Let's be clear, it's a one-way trip." This really makes me think that the only way to pilot the ship is to transfer a person's consciousness into it. They leave their body behind and embrace the new alien way of life. This also means that they would not be able to return home after. I think that this means it is the commander's mind or sheer willpower that controls and moves the ship. The game perfectly leans into that theory as well. You start on a tutorial planet, learning the controls at the same time as the commander. As he stretches his mind to stop thinking in human terms, but act more alien, we learn to control the ship better. This could also then explain why we see the flashes of memories as we explore around. There have always been arguments about the soul of a person, if it only exists in their mind, or if their body or something else has some kind of tie or connection to it. Transferring an entire being into an alien construct makes you wonder, are they just a copy, or are they really the same person that they were to begin with? If it were to happen, you might begin to forget or lose yourself. Those flashes may have been remembering or focusing on the goal, trying to keep the Jupiter flyer in his mind to make sure that he had the willpower to continue on. More and more as you play, the ship becomes stronger, and flying it becomes easier. Controlling gravity, moving around, and jumping from planet to planet becomes more natural. It's almost as if through these different jumps and tests, the commander was able to begin thinking less like a human, and begin to think more like an alien. This allows him to realize the power the Exo One possesses, and believe that he can actually save his crew. Once he's mastered the alien technology, he is able to create and use the singularity to save his crew. Seeing them saved, his mission is complete. There's nothing left for him except to revel in his victory and enjoy that he was finally able to explore Jupiter. Then, once you've had your fill of looking around, you have to hold a button to end the game. You choose to end your journey and allow him to cease to exist. This actually brings up another interesting thought. What happens to the commander? And did he actually travel back in time to save his crew? After finishing the game, time travel was the easiest solution I had thought of. He went into the singularity, went back in time, and saved the crew. Depending on what version of time travel you believe in, this idea could cause a lot of problems and paradoxes. If he were to travel back in time to before the flyer exploded, that would mean there are two of them existing at the same time, one on the orbiter and one flying the Exo One. After saving his crew, he would never have returned to Earth 1 year later, and we wouldn't have received the signal. So how could it exist and he use it to save them at the same time? After replaying the game and watching the ending scenes again, I think I've changed my mind on what I believe happened. If you watch really closely, when the Exo One travels through the singularity, time doesn't appear to rewind, but instead it almost looks like a Big Bang event happens. We see planets, stars, whole galaxies and nebulas spill out of that singularity. We then zoom past the planets in our solar system as we approach Jupiter, and then you hear what sounds like people talking over a distorted radio. While I can't make out what they're saying, it could be almost like hearing the history of the world catching up to our point in time. It's like we birthed a whole new universe, or a parallel universe. This would then allow a version of the commander to make it home with his team, and us to exist in the Exo One. We can have two commanders exist at the same time, until we decide to end it all without the messiness of time travel. As for what caused the original Jupiter flyer to explode, rewatching the cutscenes does reveal a lot. We know that they caught fire, that there was an energy spike, a noise that they can't stop, and then they explode before the escape pods eject. Watching the scenes again, we can see a giant blue light fires in front of their ship before it explodes. This blue light looks exactly like the transportation the Exo One uses to jump from planet to planet. As you accelerate, the blue light fires and beams you off to another world. I believe an alien craft must have been traveling off of Jupiter when the flyer was in the atmosphere. Without realizing the flyer was too close, they beamed away, causing them to explode. They are most likely the ones who sent the signal back to Earth with the plans for the Exo One. This could be interpreted like an apology and a way to fix what happened. When the singularity we used to save the crew is created, the exact same scenario is used to recreate it. The blue light shoots into the sky and the casual event collides with it, creating the singularity. This does pose another question that I don't think I have an answer for. Did the original collision with the flyer create a singularity? If so, does that mean we're already in a parallel world? My other unanswered thoughts involve the orbs that follow us across some planets. It's possible it could be the original alien ship that destroyed the Jupiter flyer. Maybe they're coming along with us to make sure that we learn how to save them and make it to our destination safely. On two separate occasions, it appears that they do help us and fix our ship when it's not working. It would make sense that if they did blow up the flyer, that they might feel guilty and are the reason we were sent the technology to fix it in the first place. But there's nothing in the game that I found to answer this one way or the other. Anyway, this is a really fun game, and I love stories and lore like this. While it can be frustrating not knowing everything, it's also fun to theorize on what it could mean. I'd be very interested to hear if you interpreted it differently than me, or if there's anything that I missed. Exo One is available finally on PlayStation on June 27th, 2024, and has been available on Steam and Xbox for a couple of years now. If you haven't taken the time to fly around the clouds of Jupiter, now is the perfect time. Thanks so much for watching, and as always, happy gaming.